If I didn't get elected, he definitely would not be spending $10 billion.
And for southeastern Wisconsin, this is an absolute game changer.
From Washington, President Donald Trump and Speaker Paul Ryan on Wednesday unveiled the plan for a Foxconn plant in Wisconsin. I'm Frederica Freiberg tonight on Here and Now. A first look at what we know about that plan and a closer look at the Foxconn Corporation from a Beijing-based industry expert. Then a look ahead at options the legislature faces to finance the incentive package for Foxconn. Incentives pegged at $3 billion. Later, a seller's market for property owners in southeast Wisconsin as Foxconn eyes locations. It's Here and Now for July 28.
Funding for Here and Now is provided in part by Friends of Wisconsin Public Television.
We just heard from President Trump and House Speaker Ryan in Washington giving a cheer for the prospect of a Foxconn operation in the Badger State. Back at home, Governor Scott Walker held a Milwaukee welcome party on Thursday evening. Zach Schultz was there.
Governor Scott Walker and Foxconn Chairman Terry Goh signed a memorandum of understanding Thursday, taking the next step towards Foxconn's first factory in the United States.
Wow. This is a big day for Wisconsin. It is a big day for Foxconn.
The first phase of the $10 billion factory is expected to be operational by 2020 and will produce liquid crystal display panels, or LCD screens, for things like televisions.
With this deal, they will be made in America, proudly in the great state of Wisconsin.
Wisconsin beat out several other states competing for the factory, and Chairman Goh credited Governor Walker and the people of the state.
Why Wisconsin? People. People should be trust each other.
The deal won't come cheap. If Foxconn creates the promised 13,000 jobs, over the next 15 years they will receive $3 billion in tax credits from the state and more benefits from local governments.
Which is big. It's bigger than anything we've done before. But if you want to play in the big leagues, it's comparable with just about every other major financial incentive like this for a major project anywhere not only in this country but around the world.
So far, most Democrats, like Minority Leader Peter Barca, are supportive of the proposal.
The opportunity is very exciting.
But he knows there are concerns about the size of the tax credits.
I know that there will be some pushback. There's no question about it. On the other end of the spectrum, it's not just the size of the package. You have to look at, the return on investment.
It's a really big number, but remember, it's paid out over 15 years. It's paid out only when people are actually hired, and these are way more than family-supporting jobs, which is what we want in Wisconsin.
The next step requires the legislature to go into special session and pass the state incentives into law. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos says that will happen by mid-August, since the legislature won't have much say over the details.
I think most of the details have been negotiated with the corporation, so of course we want to do our due diligence to see how they impact the taxpayer, how we make sure that there are guarantees in there.
The deal came together over the last few months, and while things are moving quickly, Governor Walker thinks the impact on Wisconsin will last for generations.
This is something that will say to the world, we have arrived. The eagle has landed, and it's spread its wings, and it's taken off again. We are ready.
That was Zach Schultz reporting. In tonight's Closer Look, we go to Beijing. That's where we caught up with an economic development expert in China who advises clients on foreign technology strategy and acquisitions. He is very familiar with Foxconn and its chairman. He's also very familiar with Wisconsin, having attended college and law school here, also working here for many years, including as chair of the Wisconsin International Trade Council. In a Skype interview, we started by asking Einar Tangen his reaction to Wisconsin landing Foxconn.
I think it can be treated, if it's going to go forward, as an opportunity. The corridor between Milwaukee and Chicago has been too long overlooked. It could be the next site of a very, very good tech corridor that could help both Wisconsin and Illinois develop their attributes. I mean, this is a wonderful area. We'll see how it develops.
Do you think Wisconsin has the technologically trained workforce for this kind of operation?
Not currently, but you do have resources. Quite frankly, I would advise that Wisconsin get together with Illinois on this particular project, because a lot of people from Illinois are going to be filling the gap that exists in these areas. These are areas where, you know, traditionally blue-collar industries, some tech, but very, very small. Certainly not enough to fill the gap here. I would expect people coming up from Illinois, northern Illinois, coming there to work. Illinois obviously has a very large tech corridor between the universities in Wisconsin and Illinois. I think there would be enough to fill the pipeline for a factory like this.
You've said you thought Foxconn would have expected closer to $5 billion in incentives to locate in Wisconsin, but even at $3 billion in incentives that Governor Walker is announcing, in your mind, is that a good deal for taxpayers and citizens?
Depends on how you look at it. I think the average person will decide that, no, this probably is not a good deal. They see the enormity of all of the issues that are going on with finance, healthcare, etc. This is, remember, a very region-specific benefit. The idea that the state is going to support this area is going to be a hard pill to swallow for those in maybe perhaps northern and Wisconsin, who see very little of this kind of activity, and they're going to wonder why this money is being spent. On the other hand, the business community will probably see this as a long-term opportunity. There will be real estate development, there will be fortunes to be made, there'll be construction, there'll be a lot of activity, perhaps an economic multiplier that justifies this.
As for Foxconn's business model, its labor costs and worker conditions in China or elsewhere, how does that translate to Wisconsin? It's obviously very different here.
Yes, if you look at the other countries, the 7 to 9 countries, depending on how you want to count it, that they're in, low labor costs tend to be the common denominator. Wisconsin obviously is not going to be that.
Now, more specifically, we've all read about conditions being so bad at some of these Chinese factories that Foxconn had employees dying by suicide. What should we know about concerns over that kind of extreme that people are now raising?
Well, I think it would be very difficult to kind of have the company town mentality that they had perhaps in China. That, I think, was what drove a lot of these people. These were mostly migrants coming from small rural villages in China. Perhaps a lot of shock involved there, a lot of overtime, very closed system, very, very difficult. But Terry is a very, very savvy businessman. He's a guy who's going to watch very carefully where the signs are. I think the fact that he has chosen Paul Ryan's district is an indication that he is a very savvy businessman who understands how politics works. It has helped him in China and all of the other countries that he's been involved in. He does it at a very high level. He does it very well. I don't think he'll be looking to antagonize people in the United States, and I think he understands that the conditions here will be quite different. You must pay overtime. You must obey the rules.
As to the politics of this decision on the part of Foxconn, clearly President Trump has declared he wants things made in America. Is Foxconn concerned enough about tariffs cutting into profits that it's getting ahead of that and working to please the president by going into a battleground state like Wisconsin? Do the politics extend that deeply into this?
I would say absolutely. Terry is very, as I said before, very, very savvy. He's not going to miss a trick. His business is so large and so worldwide, he cannot afford to lose markets. He loses markets, he earns competition. Right now, he basically owns most of the market. He wants to keep it that way. This is a safety play, and it makes lots of sense. President Trump is, as most people have realized, very open to flattery. He likes it when people throw around big numbers, especially if they're promising jobs or made in America. We'll have to see how it all works out in the end. My guess is that this plant will not be the kind of assembly plant that they have in China, where they have tens of thousands of workers toiling away, putting pieces together. It's an LCD screen factory, so my guess is a lot of it will be automation and as few employees as possible. So yes, politics is definitely behind this, and as I said before, I don't think it's a mistake that this is being touted in Paul Ryan's neighborhood.
Some point to concerns that Foxconn made similar announcements in Pennsylvania previously and the plant never came to be. Could that happen after the announcement about Wisconsin?
Well, it's obviously a concern. This is a little splashier than most, and they also have the president directly involved. I don't know that he would want to play that kind of bluff game with Donald Trump unless he thinks Donald Trump is not going to be around in another year or so. I think it makes more sense that he is interested in getting the Trump organization on his side, building in America as I said, as an insurance policy against a trade war, which is still quite possible.
You spoke earlier about automation in the plant, having as few employees as possible. But Wisconsin is talking about 3,000 jobs to start, potentially ramping up to 13,000 plus spin-off employment. Do you think those kinds of numbers add up, given your sense about automation?
I would find it hard to believe that he would have those kind of numbers there. I could see a highly automated factory being staffed at as low levels as possible. Remember, he's not actually producing a lot of these components that are going into these LCD frames. Those are going to be done elsewhere, the glass, the boards, and things like that. I don't know exactly what they're going to be producing there, but it's not going to be all done on premises. Therefore, you'll have a tremendous amount of suppliers, there'll be people in shipping, and things like this. So, as I said, the upside opportunity, if they go forward with this, is not necessarily looking what you're going to get out of Foxconn, which is going to be very, very little, but looking what kind of infrastructure you could build for future innovation and creating kind of a new tech corridor that could be very helpful, as I said, to Wisconsin and Illinois.
As to infrastructure, do Wisconsin's highways and rail lines support this operation?
Well, interesting enough, this could be a catalyst to a lot of the infrastructure needed, because one of the things Foxconn is going to insist on is that they have a mature infrastructure to handle whatever they have, and that is probably going to mean roads, because everything comes out of Wisconsin. Despite having the Great Lakes there, most of it is going by road and some by rail. So don't be surprised if part of the package is a series, some money's being put towards the infrastructure in southeastern Wisconsin. As I said, though, this is very difficult for a lot of the areas in northern Wisconsin who kind of see all this excitement and they say, "Where's mine?" You know, our roads aren't being taken care of and things like that. So I think Scott Walker and his team is going to have to go a little ways to show how this is going to benefit the entire state, not just a small corridor between Milwaukee and Chicago.
That was Einar Tangen in Beijing. As we've said, the promise of thousands of Foxconn jobs comes with the price tag of $3 billion in state tax credits, the largest incentive package in state history. The Memorandum of Understanding between the state and the company contains few details, but those are expected in a full bill to be brought in that special session of the legislature. We turn now to a UW economist whose expertise includes public financing of private industry projects. Steve Deller is a professor of agriculture and applied economics at UW-Madison, and thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you.
Well, so the Foxconn package dwarfs previous incentives to attract or retain jobs. What's your reaction to it?
Wisconsin historically has not played this game. They will put together a reasonable package and say, take it or leave it. But this particular one is kind of passes that red line that we've had historically. But this is not just a cash giveaway. This is, the company has to hit a series of benchmarks. And if the company doesn't hit these benchmarks, the incentives don't apply, and the state can actually what's called clawing them back, essentially saying you didn't do what you promised, give us some of the money back.
And so you feel as though that's enough of a protection with this size of an incentive package?
Those kind of protections have to be in place. Otherwise, it is just a pure giveaway, and that would be a bad deal for the state of Wisconsin. The devil's in the details, and those details are starting to come out, and it appears as though most of the incentives are actually tax breaks. So this doesn't look as though it's going to be money out of the pocket of taxpayers, but rather it's simply taxes that the company, and particularly the construction phase, they don't have to pay those taxes.
Now, Wisconsin already has the manufacturing and ag credits, which I understand reduces Foxconn's corporate income tax rate to 0.4%. But then they additionally get what I understand to be refundable tax credits, which to my ear sounds like kind of cash in hand.
It is to an extent in that it's taking away from their tax bill. In the end, the company will probably be paying very little in terms of taxes, particularly income taxes. So it is not money that we're giving back or giving to the company, it's money that we would not be receiving if these incentives weren't in place.
Now, in your first response, you said that we kind of crossed the red line, and you also described how previously there were, quote, reasonable kind of incentive packages. So what do you mean by crossing the red line, and do you think this is unreasonable?
It's the game that states start to play. It's been referred to as the new Civil War. Well, states will start bidding against each other to attract a company like this. And some states get wrapped up in that game. They get so focused on winning the game that they sometimes lose track that they're playing with taxpayers' money. The state historically has not played that game. They will do things like, we will invest in infrastructure if you need it, we will invest in educational programs if you need it, we will give you a deferment on some taxes, but we're not going to get on that slippery slope of playing that bidding game.
What's wrong with it if you win?
You actually can end up with the economic benefits not outweighing the cost of the incentives.
What do you think in this case?
I think the one thing that I was really worried about is that property taxes were on the table. And it appears as though they're not. And the reason is because a lot of states, when they get in these bidding games, one of the big ones is, well, you don't have to pay property taxes. The problem is that's the local government that gets hit with that, and they get caught between a rock and a hard place.
I understood, though, that some of these local districts, like wherever this 1,000 acres might be that the plant decides to locate on, they might end up losing out on taxes, even as they make service improvements to sustain the company because of like TID districts or TIF districts?
It's a TIF district. What a TIF district is that the firm still pays property taxes, but what those property taxes go to is dedicated. For example, if the municipality finds that they have to do major road improvements, or they have to do a major expansion of a sewer plant, or they have to build a new fire station, they have to incur those costs up front. And the way that they do it is they often go to the bonding market. They incur debt to do it. And the way that they can convince the banks, if you will, to loan them the monies, they say, we have this revenue stream coming off of this property that is going to be earmarked for paying for those improvements. Now, the problem, though, is that the school district loses out. Special districts, if there's any special districts in there, they lose out. It only goes to the municipality that imposes the TIF.
Now, what about the idea of potentially putting more money in for things like worker training at a certain point, you know, because this is, if these kinds of job numbers pan out, that's a lot of people that have to be kind of trained up. Can you imagine a scenario where the state would then go back and kind of give more money?
That's the kind of investment that the state should be making either way. Whether it's specific to Foxconn or it's specific to the labor force needs of the state in general, the state should be making those investments. Now, my one concern, though, is that the closer that this plant is located to the Illinois state line, a lot of those people taking those jobs are going to be commuters coming up from the Chicagoland area. People are willing to commute great distances for good-paying jobs. So it depends on how many of those jobs are actually going to people that live in Illinois.
In fact, Einar Tangent, whom we spoke with just before you, described this idea of having to probably get some of these employees out of Illinois to fill the gap if these kinds of job numbers pan out. Is that a reason why some people, experts in economic development, talk about kind of regional development as opposed to this kind of states trying to win at all costs against each other?
Exactly. Ideally, Illinois, and because given the location of this proposed plant, it would have been ideal if Illinois and Wisconsin had kind of come together and said, hey, we're gonna kind of tag team this thing and try to get it. But there's an editorial in the Chicago Tribune a few days ago that essentially said that, you know, hey, this could be a win-win for Illinois. Illinois is going to benefit from all those jobs, but they're not incurring any of the cost at all.
Is it too late to do such a thing?
I'm not sure Illinois is in a position to really do anything.
That's true. Yeah. They're in a world of hurt.
They're in a real world of hurt.
Now, the credits, back specifically to the credits, they're projected to cost between $200 and $250 million a year in this package over 15 years. Isn't that the kind of thing that the state could weather? Is that a too big a number? Or?
I think the state could weather that, because you have to realize that it's the firm that's not going to be paying those taxes. It's the construction company that's not paying the sales taxes. But you still have all the people that are going to be working there are still going to be paying sales tax and income taxes. That's where the benefit's going to flow into the state immediately.
And so just very briefly in the few seconds remaining, your overall view of this tends positive.
It does. When it first came out, I thought, oh no, we made a terrible mistake. But then as the details are coming out on the front, the idea that there's benchmarks in there, any job that gets paid less than $30,000 doesn't count. There's clawback provisions. The local government is allowed to use a TIF. I think as more details come out, I think they thought this thing through.
Great. Professor Steve Diller, thanks very much.
Thank you.
According to the governor's office, Foxconn is evaluating multiple sites in southeast Wisconsin to build the plant. The tech giant could make millionaires out of even small landowners. In Racine County, a real estate company has been busy helping to put options to sell in place on parcels of land thought to be under consideration for the $10 billion facility. A requirement for an operation of that size? At least 1,000 acres. That's where a quadrant of land just off the interstate near Racine comes in.
They did approach and ask if I was interested in selling.
Farmer Tom Fleece says his son farms some land inside the area, reportedly under consideration by Foxconn. But he owns it. Whether he's inclined to sell, he'll only say,
time will tell, I don't know.
Many inside the area, thought to have been offered options to sell, are keeping quiet about it. It's an area of more than 1,000 acres, roughly bound by Interstate 94 on the west, Highway 11 on the north, Highway K on the east, and Brown Road on the south. Some landowners just outside the quadrant have also been engaged.
A couple of weeks ago is when I found out about it from one of the farmers, because they contacted him about selling his land. And so he let me know, because his land surrounds mine.
And if the options to sell are an indication, the buyer, thought to be Foxconn, is willing to pay way over market value for the acreage. The owner of this 20 acres for sale says it's under option at $50,000 an acre. He was asking $12,000. If the option turns into a sale, it makes it $1 million plot. Sherry Shaver lives across the road from the 1,000 acres being eyed. Looking that way, that would possibly be it, huh?
Well, that's it right there for sure. And it's a matter of how much they're going to take on this side.
After tending her small country homestead for 23 years, Shaver says she's sad about either prospect, staying or leaving.
Well, it's been a shock, to think we're going to have a big old factory here, and I might be looking at a factory across from me. But then, they might buy me out, so then I'll have to move.
As to the suitability of the land, it's just off the interstate and is mostly wide open farmland. There's a rail line just east. One day this week, Department of Transportation traffic counters were on site at 2 of the crossroads of the location. The local attorney representing landowners says he cannot divulge information. And he says he has very little of it anyway. Despite not knowing details, people we talked with are mostly sanguine, even as this once exclusively rural landscape contemplates a mega electronics plant. What do you think about the potential of 10,000 jobs in this area?
that's great for people. I don't need them for neighbors, but that's fine because I'm a farmer, you know.
We're told there's at least one major landowner in that area who is not interested in selling. But according to Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, in whose district that 1,000 acres sits, municipalities can exercise eminent domain to buy them out. Now to other news of the week in our Wisconsin Look. Foxconn is known for making products for many electronics firms, including Apple. And this week, Apple was also in the Wisconsin headlines. That's because a federal judge ordered Apple Inc. to pay more than $500 million to the University of Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation for patent infringement. Back in 2015, a jury found Apple guilty of using Wharf's patented technology in their iPhones and iPads and ordered Apple to pay Wharf $234 million. After the verdict, Apple continued using Wharf's technology, which remained under a patent until last December. As a result, the judge ordered Apple to pay Wharf an additional $272 million. And that is our program for tonight. More coverage of the Foxconn story next week. I'm Frederica Freiberg. Have a great weekend.
Funding for Here and Now is provided in part by Friends of Wisconsin Public Television.